So yesterday we went over some artwork for Red Dead Redemption 2 that Rockstar dropped over on Twitter all day long. 30 minutes they dropped a new one. 23 total members of the Linde Gang. And today we find out a little bit more about each of these very interesting characters in Red Dead Redemption 2. A gang of outlaws, renegades, and misfits bonded together under the charismatic and idealist Dutch van der Linde. They have chosen to live outside the law and now fear it may be catching up with them. Visit the official Red Dead Redemption 2 website to be introduced to the van der Linde Gang, featuring original artwork plus quotes and bios for each character. So we're going to talk about the bios in just a second. But if you want to check out the original artwork and download it for yourself via wallpaper, it's over here. Click on this link. By the way, this article link below in the description section. And this link will take you here. And you can check out and download the artwork any size you want. So if you want Molly desktop size or social or tablet or mobile size, you can have her whatever size you want. That didn't sound right. Anyways, let's move on to the official Red Dead Redemption 2 website, the van der Linde Gang Outlaws for Life. We're going to start things off with the man himself, Dutch van der Linde, and here's his bio. Leader of a sizable gang of outlaws and misfits, idealistic, anarchic, charismatic, and well-read, along with well-lived, but possibly starting to unravel under the pressures of the encroaching modern world. And we see that coming to full fruition in Red Dead Redemption. Yeah. And here's his best friend, Hosea, and I believe that's how you pronounce it, Hosea. There's some discussion about that in yesterday's video. So, Hosea. A master con artist, gentleman, and thief, Hosea has been Dutch's closest friend and right-hand man for over 20 years. Intelligent and quick-witted, he can talk his way into or out of just about anything. And that's what I love about these bios. We're learning a little bit more about each of these characters. And one of my favorite new characters, Molly O'Shea. Yes, indeed. A Dublin girl. So we know now, obviously, she's Irish. I mean, her name was Irish, but we didn't know if she was Irish or Irish-American. Obviously, she's from Dublin. A Dublin girl and the object of Dutch's affection, for now at least. Molly is too high-strung for a life on the run, and it's all starting to take a toll on her. Yeah, she looks like the kind of girl that would prefer, like fancy living in a nice hotel or a nice house or mansion. She doesn't seem like she's suited for camp life. That's just my opinion. Anyways, moving on to Susan Grimshaw. And here's her bio. The undisputed boss and arbiter of justice in the camp. So my analysis of her yesterday was pretty spot on. It just seemed like from the quote, from her demeanor, that she's kind of has some authority in Dutch's gang. So yes, the arbiter of justice in the camp. Everything would have fallen apart years ago without Susan in charge. Tenacious and iron-willed, she stands for no nonsense. So yeah, so gives you a better idea of what kind of character Susan is going to be within the van der Linde Gang. Next, we got old Pearson, our cook. The camp's butcher and cook, Pearson served a short stint in the Navy that he likes to talk about at length. Loud, jolly, degenerate, who's somewhat in denial about the turn his life has taken. So he seems to be like a very loud, friendly guy. Like overly optimistic sometimes, especially if you go by the quote that we read off yesterday. He seems to be a little too optimistic sometimes, and maybe to a fault. Next we go to Makai Bell. Yes, this guy looks friendly, doesn't he? Yeah. A career criminal and hitman, wild and unpredictable, but he lives for the action. So this is going to be a very interesting character indeed. Among interesting characters, perhaps one of the most dangerous members of the van der Linde Gang within the camp itself. So I get the feeling that he may end up being in trouble down the road. Next is Charles Smith, a relatively recent recruit to the gang. Charles is quiet, reserved, but extremely competent in everything he does and virtually unbeatable in a fight. A decent, honest man who also happens to be deadly. So Charles Smith could actually be one of the newest members to the van der Linde Gang, which is interesting because in the trailers we see a lot of interaction between Charles and Arthur, and so obviously they form some sort of bond and friendship, the two of them, and maybe it's Arthur that ends up bringing Charles Smith in. In fact, there's a scene I think where you see Charles actually in a fisticuffs. He's in a fighting match. And apparently he's pretty good with the old fisticuffs, the old fight clubbing. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of character Charles is and obviously where he comes from. Next is Abell Williamson. An ex-soldier discharged from the army, possibly dishonorably. Nah, no way. Hot-headed, he tends to act first and think later, but is tough, dedicated, and always ready for a fight. A lot of this about old Bill Williamson we kind of knew already. Leopold Strauss, originally hailing from Austria. Herr Strauss is responsible for keeping the gang's books and running their money lending operations. So I was right, he's the bookmaker, he's the accountant for the gang. So far I'm not doing too bad in my speculation for once. A serious, somewhat shifty, unemotional man. He has all the qualities a loan shark needs. So he's kind of like a loan shark. Maybe you go to him to get some money if you need money, but you end up having to pay it back with interest. He's also the one who is obviously the bookie. You know, he's responsible for keeping tabs on the books. And like from the second trailer, like you have Morgan going around asking people about money, right? Do you have our money? We have your name on our ledger. Maybe this is the ledger, and maybe he's the one who sends Arthur off. Like, okay, well these guys owe us money. Go get our money. So maybe that's Leopold's, position within the Van der Linde gang. And since he's in charge of the money, he probably is pretty high up there in the ranks, most likely. Next is a character. His name is John Marston. Yeah, you may have heard of him before. Maybe, maybe not. Once an orphan street kid taken under Dutch's wing at the age of 12, John has always had to live by its wits. Shrewd, fearless, strong-willed, he and Arthur are Dutch's proudest protégés. So obviously there's going to be a relationship between Dutch, John, as well as John and Arthur. And it could actually make them kind of like brothers in a way. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in Red Dead Redemption 2. The younger John Marston against Arthur Morgan. Will they be friends? Will they be frenemies? Or will they be sworn enemies by the time it's over? Who knows? Moving on to Abigail Roberts. Eventually she'll be Abigail Marston. An orphan who grew up scrapping out a living in dive bars and brothels in the West, Abigail is a strong, straight-talking woman who has seen a lot of life and knows what it takes to survive against the odds. So once again, we do already know a bit about Abigail Roberts. I mean, Abigail Marston. We'll just stick with Abigail. And that's because of being introduced to her in Red Dead Redemption. Next is their lovely boy, Jack Marston. Young Jack has grown up with the gang, although everyone has done their best to shield him from more nefarious elements, especially his mother Abigail. He loves everything about nature and outdoor life and is carefully watched over by his many aunts and uncles. So the gang is very, very protective of young Jack. So that's going to be interesting to see how he interacts with members of the gang, specifically Arthur, and what kind of bond that they're going to develop. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of role young Jack Marston has, because he ends up being kind of an important yet somewhat annoying character in Red Dead Redemption. Moving on to Karen Jones, and a lot of you actually really like Karen Jones from the comments section yesterday. Here's her bio: a consummate scam artist and trigger woman who can drink pretty much anybody under the table. I think I had a girlfriend like that once. Bold and full of fun, she loves the outlaw life and wouldn't have it any other way. So she obviously enjoys being an outlaw. She likes drinking, having a good time. So Karen's going to be a very fun character. Yes, she is. Xavier Escala. Let's learn a little bit more about Senor Escala. A notorious bounty hunter and Mexican revolutionary, Xavier immediately had a strong connection to Dutch's ideals. Very committed, passionate, and loyal. And yeah, Xavier is definitely a very loyal character to Dutch, as we learn in the events of Red Dead Redemption. Next is Tilly Jackson. An outlaw from the age of 12, Tilly ran with another gang before joining up with Dutch. Savvy, resilient, and dependable, she can more than handle herself and isn't afraid to speak her mind. So obviously she's going to be very opinionated. If she has something to say to somebody, she's not going to bite her tongue. Also another very interesting character coming to Red Dead Redemption 2. Uncle! Much beloved Uncle. He's also returning. A hanger-on and good-time guy, Uncle is always around when the whiskey is open and never around when there's any work to be done. If he wasn't so entertaining, Dutch would have cut him loose years ago. So there's some quality about Uncle that people actually like. Except for Abigail. Abigail, I don't think she's ever really liked Uncle. But even John takes a fancy to Uncle, as some of you already know. But yeah, there's just something about Uncle that people like for some reason. Why remains a mystery. That'll probably never be solved. But anyways, Marybeth Gaskell, we're about to learn a little bit more about her. She's one of the more interesting characters in my opinion. A kind, good-natured young woman, which makes her the perfect criminal. By the time people realize they've been duped, Marybeth is already on her way home with the money. So she plays this kind of innocent role. Like she's like supposedly an innocent, naive young woman. And very smart, obviously, because she has the book, indicates that she's learned. She knows how to read. She's smart, clever. And she just knows how to read people. And I'm guessing that she has the ability to see fools coming from a mile away. And she uses her charm and her so-called facade of innocence to get the better of people. But maybe there's also a good side to her as well. I'd like to believe that. Next, Lenny Summers. Young Lenny has been on the run since he was 15 years old after killing the men who murdered his father. Smart, educated, competent, and ambitious. He's always ready to do his part. So he's going to be somebody that's going to be very reliable in Red Dead Redemption 2 as a member of Dutch's gang. And there's several scenes where you have him and Arthur together, so obviously he has a friendship with Lenny. And it's going to be interesting to see how these characters bond together, not just with Arthur, but with each other as well. Obviously there are going to be some that like each other. There's going to be some that don't like each other as much. There's going to definitely be some drama. You might as well have like a Big Brother Linde Gang, right? It's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. Next is another new character we were introduced to yesterday, Josiah Trelawney. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but anyways, he likes to dress rather well, doesn't he? Nice vest, is a pocket watch, he has got a nice button, tie, top hat, and I definitely don't think this is the stranger, so I don't think that's him. I think he just happens to dress similar. Top hats were quite popular back in the day, along with mustaches. A flamboyant conjurer, con man, and trickster. Trelawney is a very hard man to pin down, but he's always able to bring good leads. So maybe he's going to be kind of like the Wes Dickens of Red Dead Redemption 2. Maybe not entirely a snake oil salesman, but still, there's a bit of a con artist right there when it comes to Wes Dickens. And maybe he's just a, like a freaking con man in a different way. I like what they say. He's flamboyant, obviously. He's a conjurer, con man, trickster. So he's somebody that we're not going to be able to trust very well among a gang of, criminals, outlaws, murderers, and misfits. But there seems to be a certain charm to him as well. And apparently he's going to be able to be a go-to guy when it comes to good leads. So another fascinating character I'm looking forward to learning more about in Red Dead Redemption 2. Next is Reverend Swanson. An ex-clergyman now lost to debauchery. Swanson has fallen a long way from the standards he once set himself. If he hadn't saved Dutch's life in the past, it's unlikely the gang would have kept him around for this long. So apparently, somewhere along the way, Reverend Swanson literally saved Dutch's life. I don't think he saved Dutch's soul. I don't think that's possible. But for whatever rhyme or reason, the good Reverend, or not so good Reverend, saved Dutch. And I guess Dutch feels like he owes Reverend Swanson. And that's why the Reverend is still around to continue drinking and carrying out his debauchery. Next is Shane Maguire, our other Irish character. A cocky young Irish thief and stick-up man who comes from a long line of criminals and political dissidents. He always wants a piece of the action and believes in himself, perhaps a little too much. So he's probably one of the younger members of the Linde Gang. I don't know if he's one of the newer members, but he definitely strikes me as one of the younger members. And he's capable, obviously. He's going to be a useful gun in the gang, but it's possible that he might be a little too cocky. His overconfidence could end up being his downfall. Next is Sadie Adler. We're finally going to learn a little bit more about her. A widow who is hell-bent on taking revenge upon those who killed her husband. So that is what she's referring to about how nobody's taking nothing from me ever again. That's what she's so angry about. We see throughout like all the gameplay that she's been in trailers that she's a very angry woman. And obviously for good reason. She was once married, and her husband, who obviously she loved, was murdered by somebody. And I guess we'll find out who or whom in Red Dead Redemption 2. Relentless and afraid of nothing and no one, the wrong woman to cross, but very loyal to those she loves. So she does develop apparently some sort of friendship with Arthur, because she talks about how he's the only one of these fools that she trusts. So she does develop some sort of friendship with Arthur. Whether or not that leads to something more remains to be seen. Like we were talking about yesterday, it's very possible that a couple of these female characters might become potential romance options for Arthur, or maybe not. And finally, speaking of the man himself, Arthur Morgan, the main protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 2, Dutch's most dependable, capable enforcer since he was a boy. The outlaw life is all Arthur has ever known. Sharp, cool-headed, and ruthless, but of his own sense of honor. A man who gets the job done. So there you go. A little bit more information about all 23 members of the Van der Linde Gang. Now that we know a little bit more information about all 23 members of the Van der Linde Gang, which one is turning out to be most interesting in your opinion? Which one are you looking forward to learning more about? Which ones maybe scare you a little? Which ones you think are going to be more trouble for the gang going forward in the events of Red Dead Redemption 2? Feel free and share your views, opinions, and thoughts regarding the Van der Linde Gang below in the comments section.